guys, what's up? This is Century Productions and welcome to the Watchtower series. If you're new here, this is a deep dive into my toy photography. I show you how I do my cutouts, how I place everything in my setup, how I do my lights, how I pose, all that good stuff. So we're starting off this episode strong with the Astonishing Ant-Man. This is the new Marvel Legends Target exclusive Ant-Man figure that just released, I think, in the last couple weeks. I've had this figure on pre-order for the last, I would say 5-6 months, and of course I was toy hunting at a Target and I ran across a whole case of these guys. So I picked up a couple of them, canceled my pre-orders. That's usually the case when it comes to Target pre-orders. I'll put them on pre-order just in case, but I usually run across them in store because when I toy hunt, I'm always hitting up Targets. So luckily I ran into this guy. I know a lot of people in the community have been able to grab him. This is an excellent figure. It's a base buck that we've seen a million times before, but this is an updated Ant-Man figure. This is based off of Scott Lang, but it also works very well for Henry Pym, Hank Pym, whatever you want to call him. It's the same suit that Scott used that Henry initially made. So you can kind of make it work for either or. But for me, this is going to be my Hank Pym figure from now on. I have the new Astonishing Ant-Man figure from the Nick Spencer run a couple years ago with Scott Lang, so I'm going to use that as my Scott Lang, and this is my Hank Pym. I've said it before on this channel, I'll say it again, Hank Pym, probably top 5 favorite comic book characters of all time. Ant-Man, Giant Man, Goliath, Yellow Jacket, all of them. I think Hank Pym is just like such a cool character. I love him being with the Wasp, and I love those early days of the Avengers, the art, even with him in Tales to Astonish way back in the day. I even personally own the first appearance of Giant Man, which I believe is Tales to Astonish number 49. So I'm just basically letting you know I'm a huge Hank Pym fan. So getting this figure, it kind of meant a lot to me because we did receive a Ant-Man figure a couple years ago in the vintage wave, but it was just on the wrong body. It was on one of the skinnier, slimmer Spider-Man bodies. So now that we have the definitive Ant-Man, I can really start cracking out some of the Ant-Man shots I've been wanting to take for a long time now. And one of them being him shrinking. So I was able to do some research probably a couple months back when I first pre-ordered this figure, and I found this really cool cutout this is actually from a Avengers book with Scott Lang in it, because the art is a little bit more modern in those, and we get this really cool growing motion, or I guess shrinking motion, whatever you want to interpret it as, and I just thought it was such a cool cutout that I tried to make it work the best I could, and I think it really looks cool here. I tried to make sure that I sized it correctly. I really wanted to be able to show how small the Ant-Man character is down there, growing or shrinking. I think this is more showing him growing back to normal size. And then just the cherry on top is I can place this new Astonishing Ant-Man right behind this cutout, and we finally get that growing sequence. People in the community have been doing this with the little Ant-Man figures for years, leading all the way up to Giant Man. But, it was always kind of inconsistent because all the Ant-Man uniforms have never really been the same outfit. So the fact that I was able to find this cutout and it's the same outfit all the way throughout, I think it really sells this effect. And this is probably the first time I've ever actually seen that growing motion actually work for a shot, in my experience, even though I know it's my own shot. this is something I just really wanted to nail. I kind of set this up, did the cutout, and I was basically from setup to finished shot. It took maybe 30 minutes. So that's just sometimes how it goes with shots like this. You'll have the idea in your head for so long that once you actually get on the table to do it, it's just like, boom, you got it, and you got it exactly how you imagined it. So I'm really happy that this is how I'm starting off with this Ant-Man figure. I do have a couple other shots planned. I don't know if I'll particularly get them in this episode, but like I said, Hank is my guy. I love this figure. I think it's fantastic. I think you guys should definitely start hunting at your Targets to pick this figure up, because who knows when we're going to get another Ant-Man that's comic book accurate like that. Anyways, more about the shot using the vintage collection, which is the same wave that came with the first Ant-Man figure, the Wasp right here, which this figure is actually fantastic. I forget who initially used that body mold. I believe it was the first Moonstone from the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive pack, the Thunderbolts pack. So she's using somewhat of an older body, but I think it works really nice for Janet here. And I think this head sculpt on the Wasp is just fantastic. You know, we still haven't really gotten that definitive Wasp outfit from the early days of the Avengers with her in the red and with her with the hood on and the antennas. I would like Hasbro to maybe tackle that at some point in the future. But for the time being, I think this Wasp is fantastic. You also have the more modern look that came out probably like 6-7 years ago, Wasp. But I think these two pair really nicely together, especially with the blues. Kind of built a little setup around the idea of maybe them being in a building. Of course, using the NECA diorama right here. This was a little diorama piece that NECA put out a couple years back. I have a couple of them. It works really good for exterior shots, interior shots. Comes with this really nice background back here of some buildings, so you can kind of build this like kind of layering effect if you want to, you know, make it seem like it's shooting from the inside of a building. You know, we got Ant-Man, Wasp, and we have the windows back here, which I've removed the little glass plates. And then I put the buildings way back here, so it kind of looks like we're shooting from the inside of a building, and you can kind of look out beyond the apartment or building or whatever he's in right here. This is kind of supposed to be like, you know, Hank's lab or his office or something like that. Of course, we got the 3D printed desk over here with a couple little props. Lamp I got from Hobby Lobby, a couple little printed books I got from online, and then this is from a third-party Perceptor figure. It's a little microscope, and I think it works really well with Hank's little laboratory kind of feel to this shot. So, very cool shot. So here's you know, a different angle looking at the setup. One thing I did want to mention is I have this light back here, which I believe this is a Ulanzi light. It's one of the smaller Ulanzi lights. It's got colors and everything on it. And, you know, I had initially put the Ant-Man right here, and I was like, I think it's just missing something. You know, we need maybe some sort of light or something that can shine behind him and, you know, really put an emphasis on this little Ant-Man down here. And, you know, I immediately thought of this light. Used the white light since the bottom of the cutout is mainly white. And basically I was able to hide it directly behind this Ant-Man. And what it does for the final shot, it just went out. Yeah, this Ulanzi light in particular doesn't hold a charge very long, but I was already able to get the shot, thankfully. But the cool effect that it really produces is it makes this nice little white shine on the bottom of the shot here. So it kind of, you know, emphasizes this area of the cutout, and I think it looks really, really cool in the shot. And I was really happy that I kind of thought of that last minute, because it gives some highlights and some backlighting to the Ant-Man figure and the cutout, and it just kind of really sells that effect, I think. Or I guess you guys will be able to let me know if it sells that effect. I've got my garage kit right here. This is a light Ulanzi sent me a couple months ago, and I've basically used it for every shot. It's pretty inexpensive. It's very there's all kinds of different functions you can use for it, different attachments. It's very versatile. So I really like using this light. Of course, I'm using my Lume Cube panel minis here. You guys have seen me use these a million times if you've been watching the Watchtower series. These are just my softer lights. So, you know, when I'm working with the cutout, I got to make sure I have a light on the cutout so you can see the colors and the cutout very well. But you also have to make sure that, you know, you have light coming from behind the cutout as well. Otherwise, you're going to be just leaving a shadow on that Ant-Man figure. So that's what these Lume Cubes are doing right here. And they're also providing light for Janet back here. We have another light. Let me see if I can squeeze around here. There is a light right here. This is just like a little light that I use to light the bottom of backdrops. Works really well. It's only a white light, no colored lights. But it does a really nice job of lighting that background so you can really make out the buildings and everything in the shot. And then, of course, I have a couple more lights right here just to shine on the background. It was looking a little dark in the shot, so overall, this shot just kind of came together, man. Like I said, I thought about it for a while before I actually even made the cutout, which I made the cutout today. I actually made the cutout like maybe 30 minutes before I even took the shot, and then just kind of lined everything up. But yeah, this all just kind of happened today, but like I said, I was thinking about it for probably a couple weeks after I printed this out, and man, it just really came together, and it's I think I went into this with a really positive attitude, and I think I achieved some positive results here, so very happy with the shot. So enough of me talking, let's check this out. Alright, I know I said I wasn't going to do another Ant-Man shot, and here I am on the table with this Ant-Man. This is actually a really quick shot. I'm only going to take a really short video on this one for you guys, since this is very simple. This is based off of the Ant-Man 2022 miniseries that introduced the future Ant-Man. We recently got an action figure of him in the Marvel Legends Ant-Man wave from Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, and that's an excellent figure as well. It uses the same buck we have right here, and as you can see, the reference comic cover right here, it's very simple. It's got the really nice vibrant yellow background. We're just kind of getting a kind of zoomed in shot of the side profile of Ant-Man, him holding the helmet, and it just so happens that you know, I have all of the old Marvel Legends Toy Biz figures, and of course the old Scott Lang Ant-Man Marvel Legends figure. You could remove the helmet right here, so basically I'm just using that as a prop, because you know, the head that's on this figure, the newer modern version, is not removable. So we're using an old Toy Biz prop, which is virtually identical to the actual helmet, and it's based off of the same costume that we're seeing here. And we're just doing like a zoomed in version of this. I'm gonna hit up my buddy Lord Tutanus, and hopefully he can do the little trade dress for me hidden behind the arm, just like we see in the comic cover, and we can just kind of recreate this the best we can. And I think it came out pretty good. I've already taken the shot. I had them both side by side, and you know, when I'm trying to like match these comic covers, I'm really trying to match the background as much as I am the posing and everything, and I think I got the yellow for the background just right. I think this is an awesome cover. I love the contrast with the yellow background and the Ant-Man suit, and I think this is just a really cool little simple shot. You know, in Articulated Comic Book Art, every Sunday they do a little hashtag theme called Simple Sunday, where it's just very simple shots that don't really, you know, put a lot of work in, but still achieve a very cool shot. And I think this fits that bill very nicely here. You know, he's just got a very simple pose. Him holding the helmet didn't take very long to set this entire shot up. And yeah, so this is going to be my little Simple Sunday with the Ant-Man figure here. Lots of lights going on. You know, I had to make sure I had a lot of lights hitting that background. Of course, I got my panel mini, and then hidden behind this panel mini is a Ulanzi to give him some backlight. That is exactly the same on this side, so you know, it doesn't really take much to do a cool little shot like this. So yeah, this is my Ant-Man cover recreation. Alright, so I'm on the table with a couple of kitbashed figures right here. Unparalleled Universe a few years back offered these odious head sculpts, which I guess is his version of his character that he came up with. I think it's like the mascot of his channel. And I always thought that it kind of looked cool, so I grabbed one of the head sculpts, and you know, it kind of just sat in a bin for a couple of years, and I didn't really do anything with it, and it kind of got a little beat up. You know, I believe these were hand painted by Unparalleled Universe. So I probably should have taken a little bit more care of it, but you know, it kind of survived for the most part, and there's only a couple little inconsistencies on it. Anyways, you know, like I said, I just gotten the head, so I kind of like this idea of like a Sasquatch kind of character, so I kind of kitbashed I believe this was a Black Panther Wave Namor figure, and I had a couple of soft goods that I got from GPS Slot on eBay. He makes a lot of like tailored 1/12 scale clothing, and I got this jacket and the pants from him. I believe I stole these feet from the more modern version of Sabretooth that came out like a year or two ago, and then of course I had like an extra brown hand, and then, you know, just to kind of play around with the idea of this character a little bit, I added a metal hand. You know, it's obviously it's like a Sasquatch character, so it's kind of like a little bit of world building. Back here is the Darwin figure that's been thrown onto the retro Peter Parker figure, and I've added his hands. And for the most part, it's the main bits and pieces of the Peter Parker from the retro wave from like was that 2-3 years ago, like 2020 I believe. But he's got another GPS lot jacket on, so I felt like these guys kind of meshed together pretty well. You know, it's kind of like a, you know, it reminds me a lot of Top 10. Any of you guys ever read that by Alan Moore? It's like this futuristic city where there's like animal people and there's just all kinds of crazy stuff. Shartimus Prime lent me those books a long time ago, and I read them for the first time like probably like 2-3 months back, and I don't know, these characters kind of remind me of the characters from that story. Let me know below if you guys have ever read Top 10. It's an awesome like little mini series, and there's a couple spin-offs. It's really cool. Anyways, I kind of went with the skating theme. If you guys didn't know, I'm a big skateboarder. I've been skateboarding pretty much my entire life. I still skateboard regularly, and yeah, so I had these tech decks. I have a whole bunch of tech decks from my childhood, and you know, these skateboards, they kind of fit perfectly with 1/12 scale figures. I don't think I've ever taken a skate shot, but I don't know. When I looked at these characters, I was like, skateboarders, you know, skate or die, you know. So I just kind of went with that, grabbed the little parking lot base I got right here, added a wall. I've kind of done a setup very similar to this, added the sky background in the back, couple props, got some leaves, a newspaper, a cigarette packet, McDonald's cup over there. There's a Budweiser over here. It was just a fun little shot to kind of just throw a bunch of props in and, you know, kind of, you know, create this little world around these characters. You know, it's kind of like a dungy, kind of grimy part of the city maybe, and they're just kind of just chilling out, drinking, skateboarding. Of course, we got the Darwin character in the back. He's doing a primo. If you guys are skateboarders, you know that's one of the tricks that Rodney Mullen kind of brought to the world, and I've always loved those like more technical skateboard tricks, so I had to throw him in that. And I was kind of thinking of ideas of like what kind of skate moves can I throw these guys in, and the primo just kind of popped up and just kind of worked for this shot. The Odious, he does have the John Cena jersey. This came from like a old Mattel John Cena figure, and surprisingly enough, it fit around this figure pretty well. So it's kind of like he's wearing a jersey with the jacket, and I was able to put the hood over his head. He's got a very strange shaped head, so I just thought the whole idea of this, I just thought it looked really cool. Alright, from a different angle, this is more of the setup. You know, got a couple lights, the 2-panel minis right here. This one's focused on Odious, this one's focused on the Darwin character. Got my LED desk lamp right here. Of course, we're using the Ulanzi garage kit. I've said it before, I've been using the hell out of this light. I love it. It's kind of giving a little bit of light. Maybe this is kind of replicating the sun, kind of shining on Darwin, and the Odious right here, kind of giving a little bit of side lighting. Of course, we had to whip out one of our fake bonsai trees. I stacked it on some DVDs back there just to give a little bit more dimension, a little bit more layers to the background. Of course, we're using this 1/12 scale fence that I purchased off of Etsy, I think, for like $50, and it's worked out pretty well. It's just, you know, it's more just background kind of props and stuff like that. And then, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Got all the lights situated. You know, obviously we're going for daytime, and I think this shot really came together. I really like how this looks, so let's check it out. Alright, so I'm onto a Nick Fury-esque kind of shot. I actually kind of have a couple of Nick Fury shots planned. I've got a Nick Fury kitbash right here, and then of course Baron von Strucker. He came out more recently, and I was kind of playing around with the idea of kitbashing a Nick Fury. You know, in the comics, Nick wears all kinds of different outfits, civilian outfits like trench coats. Of course, his shield outfit, you know, with the white and the blue, but he also wears a variant with like a brown harness and the blue suit with black boots. And I've always thought that that was the coolest Nick Fury look. So I kind of kitbashed a very simple little outfit together using some, I think this is Black Knight's boots, and then the harness from the Outback figure. You know, it doesn't look all that cool, but I just really wanted a different look for Nick Fury. This is still, of course, using the Shield Agent body. But, you know, I was doing a white hot, shooting a white hot, and I thought the white might conflict with the Nick Fury, so I opted to do a different kind of kit bash with him. And overall, it looks okay. We've got kind of a cool futuristic gun right here. Anyways, if you guys know the history between these two characters, in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a really awesome run. I think Bob Hall did the first couple issues of the art. It's very reminiscent of the Jim Steranko early Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. comics. And there's some excellent covers and awesome artwork in that run. Highly recommend you check it out. But basically that whole story just is kind of like a cat and mouse game between Baron von Strucker, who's leading Hydra, and Nick Fury. And it got me thinking I wanted to take some kind of white hot type of shot. If you guys are in the community and follow the the action figure photography community, Boog does these white hot shots a lot of the time. If you guys aren't familiar with what white hot is, just basically a white background. You'll see this a lot in the older comics when they didn't want to use a lot of color for their panels. They would just stick all the characters in a little white scene. That way they didn't really have to worry about the background. But when you're taking action figure photography, it actually looks really nice. But anyways, getting back to Boog, he's kind of like the king of the white hot kind of style. If you browse his Instagram or check out his YouTube channel, you'll see he takes a lot of shots of characters in very nice poses with the white hot background. So I kind of got that inspiration from him a little bit with this, and there's tons of other people that use the white hot. But the real key to these white hot shots is to make sure you have a lot of light hitting your background. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lights, and 4 of those lights are pointed at the background. In order to kind of get that infinite look, you just really got to blast the background with a lot of light. So what I'm experimenting with here is I'm playing around with the idea of merging 2 different shots together. Now there is a way of doing this in camera. I think it's called multiple exposure. But in my experience, I've done it a couple times before. It never really looks like as cool as you imagined it when you do it in camera. But of course, if you have Photoshop, or in my case I use a Mac, I use GIMP, which is essentially the shittier free version of Photoshop for Mac. But I could still kind of do a lot of stuff. I'm kind of inching my way more and more into learning more editing for photos. For the most part, I'm still completely tangible, which I think even if you want to get into editing, if you're getting into toy photography, I think you should really stick with tangible at first, because you kind of learn the basics and kind of weed out all of those little tricks that editing can do for you. That way you kind of learn the basis of all the fundamentals of photography first, and posing and lighting and all that stuff. And then once you get comfortable with that, eventually you can move on to editing, which is kind of the situation I'm in right now. So merging the 2 pictures together, I want to do a close-up of Baron von Strucker and have his head as the background. Then I want Nick Fury kind of standing like this and kind of merging the 2 pictures together. What I found is I've already done that, and I've already merged the pictures together, and I don't really know if I'm going to use these pictures. I was more just kind of playing around with the idea and kind of learning how to do it. But what I've learned is that when you do a really close-up shot of this Baron von Strucker, the face printing technology, it really shows the inconsistencies on that, and I'll show you guys that here in a second. But like I said, I was just trying to figure out how I could do it. Do you guys remember those old JCPenney's portrait studios where they had somebody in the foreground and then they would have a picture in the background kind of blurred? That's kind of the idea I'm going with right here. Anyways, that's where I just wanted to explain that to you guys. That's where I got the inspiration from the late 80s, early 90s Nick Fury comics, these 2 characters, and kind of my idea of merging these 2 pictures together. Once again, this is just me kind of playing around with it, but let me show you guys what I'm talking about, and then we're going to move on to a couple more Nick Fury shots, or maybe one more for sure Nick Fury shot that I know I want to do. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of show you guys this kitbash and the idea I had. Alright, just like I promised, I put Nick Fury into a very James Bond-like kind of pose here. If you guys didn't know, I love James Bond. It's one of my favorite movie series of all time. I've done a couple of Nick Fury in replacement of James Bond shots before. I think 2 or 3. Just because I know online they sell James Bond 1/12 scale head sculpts that you can probably fit on some figures with a suit or a tuxedo, but they're $40, and I just never really felt the need to do that. And James Bond's probably never going to get an action figure unless it's a premium format 1/6 scale type of figure. So I tend to use Nick Fury. Nick Fury, when Steranko did those comics in the late 60s, that whole kind of run was kind of based on, the old Sean Connery spy kind of thrillers. So I think Nick Fury is a very good replacement in lieu of a James Bond. And basically what I did here is I took the new Club Obi-Wan Indiana Jones figure from Temple of Doom. In Temple of Doom, in the beginning, he gets poisoned. He has to get the antidote and everything. And I was able to kind of just fit this Nick Fury head right on top of it. It doesn't fit too snug. You do have to use a little bit of tack, but the proportions are correct. It looks very good. That's the cool thing about these Indiana Jones figures, is not only are they fantastic, but they also have quite a few bodies that you can use for kit bashes for Marvel Legends. And when the line initially came out, I thought, oh man, I think these figures are going to be a little too small to do kit bashes, but I was wrong. They actually work very well. So I got Nick Fury in the tuxedo. This is actually inspired from a Roger Moore James Bond promo. I'll show you guys that right here. As you can see, he's wearing a very similar tuxedo, and in fact, there's actually quite a few different Bonds that have worn almost this exact same outfit. More recently, Daniel Craig Inspector has an outfit that's almost identical to this, including the little rose on his jacket there. So I thought, James Bond is a ladies' man, obviously. A lot of those movies, they always have beautiful women in them. And I was thinking about Nick Fury. I was thinking about some of the beautiful women in his life. And I picked these two. I picked, of course, Maria Hill and Natasha Romanoff. And I think these figures work really nicely with this little kit bash of Nick Fury here. I think both of these figures are excellent. This, of course, is the Black Widow that was the Target exclusive that came on the white body. I popped her head off and I stuck it on the retro Black Widow. I think this Black Widow head is just the most beautiful one out of all of the Black Widows that they've made so far. So I really wanted to stick with that head right here. And then, of course, I used this Maria Hill, which I think this is probably top 5 best female figures the Marvel Legends line has ever produced. Of course, this is from the Quake body, but it came with the Maria Hill head. So you're able to kind of, if you get a couple of them, you can have a Quake and a Maria Hill. And I think this figure is just fantastic. Of course, it's using the Shriek body from Marvel Legends Shriek. And I just kind of posed them from that reference shot. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. Of course, using the White Hot. And of course, I got the idea for the White Hot from that promo shot. Spent a good amount of time posing them. Really wanted to get the poses down. This is not very easy to kind of situate all their hands. As you can see, Maria Hill's hand is making contact with Nick Fury, and so is Natasha's hand. And then, of course, Nick Fury is, using his left hand to kind of touch Natasha's thigh. It's very tricky to kind of get them all posed like that, and on top of it, I posed Nick Fury in this kind of crouching, stepping forward kind of motion. But it really worked out, and I really, really like how this turned out. I had a lot of fun putting this up, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just kind of go with the flow here and just look up more James Bond promo shots of him wearing the white tux, or maybe some other shots, and just have some fun shooting some white hot pictures of Nick Fury here. So I guess I'll just show you guys all of those photos right here like a little collage. Let's check them out. Alright, so I'm on the table with a little Hercules shot here. What I've realized happens sometimes is I'll pick up a figure that I haven't picked up in a while, and I chose this retro Hercules figure. I just thought it was such a cool figure, and I was also trying to do some research on when this outfit appeared in the comics. There's been several variations of Hercules outfits. There's that very iconic one where he has the boots with the straps that go up basically to his thigh, and he has the skirt on, and then of course he has the more modern look where he's actually wearing pants, and then you have like this hybrid between both of them, which is still a very iconic Hercules look. But anyways, what I was getting to is, or what I was saying is, I'll pick up the figure and I'll just kind of mess around with it, and if it's a really great figure like this one, I'll just end up taking a shot of it. You know, inspiration can come from all places. You can just pick up an old figure, pick up a new figure, read comics, watch movies. And a lot of the time for me, it's just picking up figures that I think are just really good. And then an idea just kind of happened. So I picked up this figure, started going through some old Hercules comics. I think I ran across his second solo series from like 84 or 85 or something like that. There's this really cool like little opening to the comic where he's basically trying to make his way up to Mount Olympus, and you see these cool little cutouts right here. The first one at the top left kind of says, "There is a mountain no mortal eye can see," and then this other cutout we have right here says, "A mountain no mortal limbs can climb." And then there was a third part of the cutout, but I couldn't really squeeze it into this shot. But so I kind of thought that was a cool idea to use these little cutouts, you know, to kind of give some idea of what he's doing climbing up this mountain. And, you know, I'm going to use something in the tagline that has to do with Mount Olympus, basically where all the gods live and you know, do all their godly things. You know, we got Hercules, you know, who mainly hangs out on Earth for the most part, heading his way up there. So I used this rock wall that I bought on eBay maybe like 2-3 years ago, and I gotta say, this die was kind of like slowly withering and falling apart. I've had to go in there and touch it up with some grays for the rock. It's kind of hard to store, so I had to be really careful and very selective of which panels of this little rock wall that I got I would use for this shot. And it took a little bit of maneuvering and trying to figure out how to sit Hercules on the wall and make it look like he's climbing, but still show his face, and make sure that the wall looks all very cohesive and put together, even though each of these little panels right here are their own little panel, and I'm kind of just sitting them up on top of some little stands. This diorama initially came with just like each rock wall on the ground with some ground pieces, but what I've realized I've used it for more often than not is like a rock wall or a cliff edge or something like that. I've actually done a very similar shot to this with King Kong way back in the day, so that's kind of where I got the idea for this. You know, I read these cutouts and I was like, I think maybe I can make this happen. So yeah, but this diorama is, it's not going to be around too much longer, I feel, but it looks really great. I guess if I put a little bit more love into it and paint it, you know, correctly. I just think to begin with, it wasn't really, you know, put together all too well. But I guess the way I'm kind of, you know, maneuvering it, I think it looks good here. But, you know, if you kind of look right here, you can see where some paint touch-ups I've done with different grays that didn't really work out too well. But, yeah, let me show you guys a different angle so you can kind of actually get a better idea of what I'm talking about. So, yeah, here's like a little bit more of the setup. If you guys can kind of see what I was saying, you know, these are just pieces, and they're just basically stacked on top of each other and lined up next to each other. I wanted to give a little bit of depth to this mountain, so I added some of the rock walls a little bit further up into the background. Of course, we had to make sure we had some light on the background there, which is just a cloud sky. Initially, I was going to use storm clouds, but the background print I had for that was just a little too small, so switched it to daytime, and you know, that daytime ended up working out a little bit better for these cutouts right here. So for the cutouts, basically I attached one to the rock wall right here, and then there's this other one that's like a little bit more sneaky right here. It's actually attached to a paper clip, and since this, you know, setup is so poor, let me see if you guys can see that. Since this diorama is just in kind of poor condition, I felt that it was worth it actually sticking this paper clip into the diorama. You know, this is of course made of foam, and you know, the diameter of a paper clip is so minimal. I feel like even if I pulled it out, you wouldn't even be able to tell that was there, but I felt comfortable doing that. You know, this is an old sailor's trick that we've used in ACV for a long time here. Basically, if you just get the paper clip level with the camera and you put something on the paper clip, you can actually make it appear as if the cutout or whatever you're trying to hold up is floating in thin air. So I think it really creates a cool effect for this shot here. And I really like the whole layout of this shot, as you saw from the previous little, the previous angle I had you guys at. We get to see the cutout, we get to see Hercules, we get to see the other cutout, and then we get to see the edge of the cliff. So I think the whole setup just kind of came together and it looked really cool. Hercules is a really dope character, man. I'm glad that they finally introduced him into the MCU, and I really think that they should give us a Olympians movie or you know, some kind of Hercules movie, because he is just really an awesome character. You know, Hercules has just been in Greek folklore for, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years, but you know, Marvel took him in and they did something really cool with this character. And you know, he's a ladies' man, he's funny, he's strong, he has tons of different story arcs where he's just facing off against all kinds of demons and monsters and other superheroes, and he has a very rich history, so I really like this character. Anyways, I wanted to thank you guys for watching this episode of the Watchtower. It took me a couple weeks to complete this whole episode. You know, I'll kind of space out my shots. Sometimes I'll do like 3-4 shots in the span of like 3 or 4 days, and then other times it'll take me like a week or maybe a week and a half just to complete maybe 1 or 2 shots. It all depends on how I'm feeling, my mood, when inspiration strikes, or whether or not I'm doing other things. I gotta thank Hercules here, man, because if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have taken this shot and finished up this episode. But you know, it's kind of funny because I set this all up, and just so you guys can, I guess I can kind of move this. You can see, got reflexes. Got good reflexes still, man. But you can kind of see where the stand and everything kind of comes into play. It's just like a little stand to hold up a light. But if it wasn't for Hercules, what I was getting at, I'm getting off topic, but if it wasn't for Hercules, I don't think I would have came up with more inspiration and other ideas. So basically right after this, even though I'm closing out the episode, I'm going to get working right on the next episode, because I got some cool ideas for some magic themed kind of shots and a Thor themed shot because of Hercules. So stay tuned for that for the next episode of the Watchtower. It's going to be a very special magic-oriented sorcery, Doctor Strange, Brother Voodoo, Doctor Doom, Thor kind of episode. So if you weren't feeling this one, hopefully you feel the next one. But make sure to check out my Instagram, see all the extra behind the scenes if you're into that kind of thing, or check out the finished shots. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Let's check out this shot.
That's crispy.